On a stormy evening in late autumn, I found myself torn between joining my friends for a night out and the allure of staying cozy at home. The rain pelted against the windows, and the distant rumble of thunder grew louder, echoing through the darkened streets. The thought of braving the inclement weather quickly lost its appeal, and I decided to stay home, embracing the warmth and comfort of my living room. I settled onto the couch with a soft blanket wrapped around me, a cup of hot cocoa in hand, and the remote within easy reach. The familiar hum of the television was a comforting backdrop to the storm outside. The news was on, detailing the worsening weather and advising residents to stay indoors. I couldn't have been happier with my decision to stay in, away from the cold and wet night. The hours passed uneventfully as I flipped through channels, searching for something to hold my interest. The rain continued to fall in relentless sheets, and the occasional flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by the crash of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. I was absorbed in a particularly gripping thriller when I heard an unusual noise outside. It was a faint, almost imperceptible sound, barely audible over the drumming rain and the murmur of the television. I muted the TV, straining to hear. The sound repeated a soft thud, like something or someone bumping against the side of the house. My heart rate quickened, but I told myself it was probably just the wind or a stray branch from the old oak tree in the yard. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check it out. I approached the front door cautiously, the wooden floorboards creaking under my weight. The house felt eerily silent now, every noise amplified in the absence of the television's background hum. I unlocked the door and pulled it open, peering out into the cold, rainy night. The darkness was nearly impenetrable, save for the occasional flash of lightning that briefly illuminated the yard. Rain poured down in torrents, creating a symphony of droplets against the pavement and the roof. I saw no one, no movement, nothing out of the ordinary, just the relentless rain and the empty street beyond. Shivering from the cold, I quickly shut the door and locked it, reassuring myself that it was nothing to worry about. I returned to the couch, wrapping the blanket tighter around myself and unmuting the TV. The familiar sounds of the movie brought a sense of normalcy back, and I tried to immerse myself in the storyline. But the sense of unease lingered, a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. About an hour later, just as I was beginning to relax again, I heard another sound, this time coming from the kitchen. It was a distinct noise, different from the random creaks and groans of an old house in a storm. It sounded like a cupboard door softly closing, or maybe something metallic being moved. I froze, my mind racing through possible explanations. The storm, the wind, the old house settling, but none of these seemed to fit. Cautiously, I stood up and made my way to the kitchen. The hallway was dark, and I flicked on the light switch, the sudden brightness almost blinding. The kitchen door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. I pushed it open slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The kitchen was empty, but something felt off. The window above the sink was open slightly, letting in the cold, wet air. I distinctly remembered closing all the windows earlier in the evening to keep out the chill. I walked over to the window, peering out into the darkness. The backyard was as empty as the front yard, with no sign of any intruders. I closed the window and locked it, my fingers trembling. Just as I turned to leave the kitchen, I noticed something on the counter that made my blood run cold. A knife, one from the set in the wooden block on the counter, was missing. I had been using it earlier to cut fruit and was certain I had put it back. The realization sent a wave of fear through me. Trying to stay calm, I searched the kitchen thoroughly, looking for any sign of forced entry or anything else out of place. Everything seemed normal, except for the missing knife. I backed out of the kitchen, closing the door behind me, and quickly checked all the locks on the windows and doors throughout the house. Everything was secure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I returned to the living room, the comforting glow of the TV doing little to ease my anxiety. I kept the volume low, listening intently for any other unusual sounds. Minutes stretched into hours, and the storm outside showed no signs of letting up. The occasional flash of lightning and rumble of thunder seemed to mock my growing paranoia. Just as I began to think I might have imagined the whole thing, I heard a soft, almost imperceptible creak coming from the direction of the stairs. My heart leaped into my throat. I stood up, every muscle tense, and listened. The sound came again, a slow, deliberate creak, as if someone was trying to move quietly but couldn't avoid the old house's betrayals. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and dialed 911. My voice was barely steady as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. They assured me that a patrol car would be dispatched immediately and advised me to stay on the line and find a safe place to hide. I moved as quietly as possible, creeping toward the small closet under the stairs. I slipped inside, closing the door just enough to see out through a narrow crack. The minutes dragged on, each second feeling like an eternity. I could hear the creaks of footsteps moving through the house, coming closer. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid whoever was in the house would hear it. I held my breath, praying the police would arrive before it was too late. The footsteps stopped just outside the closet door. I could see a shadow moving under the door crack, the faintest hint of movement that sent a wave of terror through me. The door handle turned slowly. My grip on the phone tightened, my knuckles white. Just as the door began to open, there was a loud knock on the front door, followed by the distinct sound of a police officer announcing their presence. The footsteps retreated quickly, and I heard the back door open and close. I waited a few moments before daring to move. I opened the closet door cautiously and made my way to the front door, peeking through the peephole. The flashing lights of a police car were a welcome sight. I unlocked the door and let the officers in, relief washing over me. I explained everything to them, my voice shaking with the adrenaline and fear that still coursed through my veins. They searched the house thoroughly, finding the back door slightly ajar and muddy footprints leading into the kitchen. The missing knife was found outside, discarded in the yard. The officers assured me that they would patrol the area and keep a close watch on the house. They suggested I stay somewhere else for the night, but I was reluctant to leave my home. Instead, I asked a friend to come over, needing the comfort of another person's presence. The rest of the night passed uneventfully, though sleep was hard to come by. The storm continued, its ferocity a stark contrast to the eerie silence that now filled the house. Every creak and groan seemed amplified, each one sending a fresh wave of anxiety through me. Morning came slowly, the storm finally beginning to abate. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a weak, golden glow over the room. My friend and I made breakfast, the normalcy of the routine a welcome distraction from the events of the night before. As the day wore on, the fear and tension began to ebb, replaced by a cautious optimism. The police returned to take a statement and reassured me that they were doing everything possible to find the intruder. I resolved to be more vigilant, installing additional locks and security measures to ensure my home would be safe. The memory of that night lingered, a dark shadow over my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense that the intruder might return. But with time, the fear began to fade, replaced by a determination to move forward and not let the experience define me. In the weeks that followed, life gradually returned to normal. The storm became a distant memory, its fury replaced by the calm, clear days of early winter. The house, once a place of fear, became a sanctuary again, its walls filled with warmth and light. But even as the seasons changed and the memories faded, I couldn't help but feel a lingering unease whenever the weather turned stormy. The sound of rain against the windows and the distant rumble of thunder would always remind me of that night, a reminder of how quickly normalcy can be shattered and the thin veil of safety torn away.